if there were any sort of lingering thoughts or discussion points from last week, let's talk about those, because we didn't really jump into that until like the last 20 minutes. So I want to give enough time for the discussion about the purpose of life being attaining happiness. So, any thoughts on that? You look like you have thoughts.
Well, I guess I was really pondering, because wasn't it pursuit of happiness?
The Dalai Lama,
the
Dalai Lama says the purpose of our life is to seek happiness.
Okay.
That is clear, he says. Yeah.
And did we end up
Did
we end up coming up with the verb create happiness?
That's what I like, or else something like the idea, happiness being somewhat like the idea of enlightenment, where it's already in you. Like, I wholeheartedly believe that you have all the answers in you. It's just a matter of unpeeling the layers that are keeping it hidden. Because, like, one concept that I go back to is that, and this is just my own belief system, so this is where I'm sort of justifying this, is we're all made of the same stuff, right? So we're made of the same things that the stars are in the whole universe. We're all made of the same things. But I also have a belief that it's not necessarily reincarnation, although I do believe in reincarnation, but when it comes to like the recycling of souls, or coming back to your body, but also your body goes into the earth, and then we're all part of this sort of circle of life kind of thing. And I feel like there's sort of a similar idea when it comes to consciousness or the rebirth of the soul, but also the idea that with that, if we're all part of the same organism, like I'm going to call the planet and our universe a sort of organism, then we're all part of this whole thing. Like in this whole organism, like all the answers are here. One of the things that I find is so profound is when like astronauts have looked back at the planet, and I can't remember who said it, but like all that ever has been or all that ever will be is on that ball, is on our ball of Earth, like so all of history, all thoughts, all things are in this ball. We have a different perspective because we're on it and we're living day to day, but when you pull back, you see that this has everything. And so the idea that all answers are on this ball. And so it's just a matter of peeling it back and figuring it out. But the answers are there. So when it comes to happiness, I don't see why that's any different. That, you're just sort of like pulling off the gunk. You're using a little bit of universal goo gone to get rid of the gunk, to allow happiness to happen. So, I don't know, create or reveal happiness, because it's there. Also the idea that nothing else can make you happy. You have to make your own self. You have to be happy within yourself. Because if your happiness relies on someone else or something else, it's doomed to fail. Because if that thing goes away, then you're screwed. I'll be blunt. The Dalai Lama would never say that, but you get the point.
Yeah, and that's a challenging concept because of the fact that obviously there's certain people that you're with and you enjoy being with, and you feel happy with them and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, you're happy when you spend time, with my kids or my dog or whatever,
Yep.
And then okay, yeah, but that's, we have to come into the situation, I guess, happy to begin with, right? So I'm wrestling with that concept because, yeah, there are certain people or, situations or whatever, like chocolate may make you happy, right?
So let's
tell me something about.
So let's talk about then, like, different levels, because just saying happiness, I think, is vague, right? So the idea that chocolate brings a smile, so then let's be specific. Chocolate brings a smile to my face. But if I had, I'm going to be real here. So this is the 1-year anniversary of my mom's death, right? I could have let this entire day drag me down. But I didn't. And, but let's say the day had been really heavy and hard. Chocolate would not have made that day better.
I see.
Right?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
So, I think that I think it's kind of like, where we use the word awesome sort of incorrectly now. Awesome means huge and big and full of awe. Where you're like, oh my God, dude, that was like an awesome thing that happened. And it probably really wasn't. So I think that we overuse certain words, and so if I were to be more specific about how I feel about chocolate, it makes me happy. It brings a smile to my face. I enjoy eating chocolate. I enjoy the flavor of chocolate. I like what the chocolate rush, the chocolate feeling. I specifically like things that are crunchy in my chocolate. I do not like bad chocolate, so not all chocolate makes me happy. So I think being specific and also recognizing that there are different levels to probably all things, but especially when you're talking about emotions. Like, I have a happy life. And there are things that bring me joy. But truly, I think that I think that it depends on the circumstance. I think it depends on the situation. So I think being specific, maybe using better words to define something or describe something, because if the argument is that happiness is the goal of life, is the purpose of life, then happiness is a pretty big, important thing. And happiness and well-being are usually used interchangeably. So making sure that we have an understanding truly of what happiness is, what the idea of it is, just like having a proper understanding of the word awesome, and describing all other things a little bit better. I think you could probably do the same thing with the word love. Like, I love Aaron, I love my mom, I love pizza. Probably not in the same way, right? So, using better words. That's my thought. That's my thought on that. I think it comes down to, like, have a good understanding of defining the words properly.
And I think happiness is a mindset.
Yeah.
It's a choice.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I would say I'm happy and scored well on that quiz and have been defined by people as being happy, I struggle with depression.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to really make that choice. Okay, what are you going to do to, get to the level of happiness for today?
And is that a moment by moment choice for you?
Kind of comes in waves.
Mm-hmm.
So the questions I have with that then is how, and I know sometimes you just have to fake it till you make it, right? You just have to, and I definitely appreciate the idea of, you can't control the things that are going on around you in the world, but you can control your response to them. It's just kind of like what you were saying. And so, there's just sometimes you just cannot, make yourself happy, because of whatever's going on, it's just...
I don't think that the assumption, I don't think that the rule or whatever we want to call this thing, I don't think that the expectation is that you're constantly happy. Kind of like, your ex-mother-in-law, she's always happy. Well, but no, not really. I mean, just kind of like at the beginning of the last yoga talks, I said, are you happy overall? are you happy right now?
Right.
There's a difference. I don't think you're expected to be. If you were happy all the time, I would expect, like, if you were constantly in a state of joy and happiness, I would assume that probably something was wrong with you. Or that you were in denial, or...
Right, well, I guess that's what I was getting to, because I think there's a tendency sometimes for people just to, put on this face of happiness.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Right.
I'm happy.
Well, then you're not being authentic.
And then you're not being authentic.
Sure.
And so that, there's that whole fake it till you make it kind of thing, which is not being authentic, right?
Yeah, but I don't think with life in general, right? So, like, each moment, let's say if I'm nervous to speak in front of a crowd, I'm going to fake calmness. I'm going to fake confidence just to get me through it, because faking that will get me through it and it'll make me feel like, oh yeah, maybe I am confident. But if you're having to fake happiness, like your foundation of life, if you're having to fake that you're happy, then you're fooling yourself. Then you probably do need to seek help, medication or yoga or a therapist. So I think that it's different. I don't think that it's not black and white, absolutely, and I don't think it's all encompassing.
And I guess that's what, the boundaries between these things, I guess, is where I'm interested in.
Mm-hmm.
Because when have I, in my own, when am I crossing that line from, that it's okay to project some happiness, even if you're not 100%, or project some confidence or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you're not 100% confident or whatever, just to get you through a situation, and then when's, if I was asked the meaning, of life, it would be to become the most authentic person, or the authentic self that you can be.
Okay.
Okay. And so sometimes that would be I'm happy, and sometimes it would be I'm not so happy. Sometimes I'm melancholy, and it's okay to be melancholy or whatever, just as long as you're not, just as long as that's not driving your entire existence. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
That that melancholy or the happiness or whatever, and so that's what, and I know he's coming from a different cultural perspective, way different than probably I am,
Mm-hmm.
Although I think he probably has a good understanding of how people think in the West, but still, to think that the goal of life or the purpose of life is to seek happiness, it's just, that means something I think entirely different to Western folks, in Western culture than maybe it does.
Well, but again, so just taking that
and with that, I'm going to have some chocolate.
and do that, yes, chocolate, yes. But keeping in mind that I read the first 2 sentences of an entire book, and if you take that statement alone, sure, it seems frivolous, it seems unrealistic, it seems whatever.
Simplistic.
Yeah, simplistic. However, number 1, what's wrong with the answer being simple? Okay. But number 2, that the notion that if you're seeking happiness or creating whatever word that we want to use, that is backed up again by, it's the tip of the iceberg if you want to put it that way, so maybe visually. So if our goal and our purpose in life, although I think that it really should be done here, I think that your purpose in life is to have this underlaying, foundation of happiness. And if you can, it's like the concept of santosha, so contentment, right? So if every aspect of your life has this underlying of happiness, then that with every moment I can seek to not be, I cannot be, fly off the handle angry or go to an extreme. So one aspect of this would be that you're not throwing out all of the rules of yoga or Buddhism or Catholicism or Christianity or Hinduism or whatever. You're staying also. You remember all of this stuff about compassion and the golden rule and nonviolence and authenticity and all of that. But the idea that, when something happens in life, if you try to seek, and happiness doesn't mean like giddy and ridiculous. I mean, I can tell you that although stressful, I probably could have managed it better. My experience with my mother's whole thing, and even her death, I found a lot of, I found happiness in that. I found beauty, I found joy, I found peace. So I did not let that entire experience completely destroy my life. And I used my tools of yoga and the things that I've learned in Buddhism in order to see something that wasn't cripplingly emotional to me. So it seems simple, and I think it is, the notion, but simple doesn't mean easy. Being happy is not easy. There's stuff that you've got to do all day long to try to make yourself, to keep your life happy. But if your goal, so let's change it up and say, okay, let's say that my goal in life is to be a doctor, or my goal for college. Let's take a life chunk. Say my educational goal, my career goal is to become a doctor. So therefore, all of the things that I'm going to do from age 14 until whenever, is to have this end goal of becoming a doctor. And so I have to go to school, I have to do these certain things, I have to determine which specialty, I have to keep my grades up, I have to pay all of these things in order to become a doctor. And then, once I get my degree, then I need to continue being a good doctor, under the assumption that you find it valuable to be a good doctor. You have to keep up your education. You have to keep learning because medicine is changing, because you see different people all the time. So I think that we can, sort of change the concept here and see it similar to, like, when you've got a goal. I'm not a doctor every single day. I've got, 8 to 12, maybe more years to actually become a doctor. And then once I am a doctor, then I have to maintain that doctorism. And I have to, not do unethical things. I have to not sleep with my patients. I have to, follow the Hippocratic Oath and all of these things to stay being a doctor. And so there are rules that you live by and guidelines and all of these things to keep you on that goal. So I'm sort of changing it to make it, to just put it into a different description. Because so then let's switch it up and say, okay, my life goal is to be happy. So I'm going to do all of these things to create happiness. I'm going to follow these rules. I'm going to, perhaps take happiness classes. I'm going to practice yoga or Buddhism or Christianity and all of these things in order to find happiness. And then once I feel that I've found happiness, then I'm going to do these things to maintain this happiness as a sort of underlying thing. But, if I'm a doctor, I also do other things. But I have this foundation of being a doctor, because when you're a doctor, that means that when you're on an airplane and somebody needs help, somebody's like, is there a doctor in the house? You need to stand up and raise your hand, right? So it sort of defines your life. But, some days you play golf. Some nights you hang out with your buddies, you know. So you're still a doctor, but you're not always doing doctor things.
And I think it, just like the journey of becoming a doctor, there are so many factors that affect you along the way of becoming a doctor. So the same thing with the journey of attaining happiness.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many factors. Either, you know, you're trying to, in that search for happiness, you might not know yet, hey, it's within, so I'm going to try all these other things outside of me.
Yeah.
That, especially Western culture.
Yeah. Drugs, alcohol,
Yeah.
sleeping around,
Yeah.
other people.
Some people don't, you know, I guess, explore that or need that in their journey.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah. And then, you know, and to your point, you know, if you're looking at other things, you know, extraneous things like substances or
other people.
you know, bad relationships or whatever, it may be that, you know, you find perhaps false happiness. So you got to tool around with it a little bit. And then, so you're constantly in this practice of learning. I mean, right now, you know, for the sake of argument, like, I assume that I'm happy right now. But what if something else happens and I assume that I'm doing the things that are creating my happiness, revealing my happiness? I've made all of these life choices in the past 4 or 5 years that have brought me to now, and I'm certainly happier than I was 5 years ago. I feel like I understand happiness. But maybe I'll make a decision in the next, I don't know, year or two, and then all of a sudden, like, oh my God, now this is happiness. This is something. This is better than it was last year, or something like that. But yeah, but I mean, life knocks you off a little bit, and shit happens, and that's, you know, that's life. But it's that balance of, you know, I'm not going to let it topple me over. I'm not going to let something, it's that choice. I'm not going to let this thing, you know, the relationship things or family things or animal things or whatever, to completely knock me off my track, because that's my choice. And I think we do have those choices. If it's truly an interesting thing to ponder for yourself, I would say read his book. So the thing that I really liked about it is that he wasn't just accepting what the Dalai Lama said. He's not just like, oh, it's the Dalai Lama, he must be right all the time. Mm-hmm. Perhaps he was right, but he asked the questions and he pushed back, and the Dalai Lama most of the time was very patient with him. And, you know, let's have this discussion and let's you know, go through it. So he made the Dalai Lama argue his points. So it's that is one of the things that I like, where it's not, because many books that are just written by the Dalai Lama, it's just him saying stuff and there's nobody to counter him. But in this, there it is. So if you're interested in the arguments for it, then I would say read it.
I wonder how they came up with the title, or who came up with the title, The Art of Happiness. Because it certainly does seem like it's
An art.
Yeah.
Happiness. Yeah.
You know, and sometimes in your art, you cover the whole entire thing that you just created.
Yeah, let's just
So
start over again.
Start over.
Yeah. And it takes practice.
Yeah. The different kinds of art.
Yeah, there are different ways of doing it. One thing I find is fascinating is that the Dalai Lama, number one, he's celibate. And he's been the Dalai Lama since he was like 4 or 6 years old. And so this is a man this is all he's done his entire life. So you think, how can he possibly have a perspective on the Western culture, on what it's like to be in a marriage or, you know, a physical relationship of some sort, or, you know, how can he possibly speak to that? But it's interesting because he actually really has a lot of insight into things, and the way that he explains some of these things, you're like, oh my God, wow, yeah. And he even points out, he's like, you know, the Howard Cutler points out, like, how can you be a celibate man talking to some of these points? And the Dalai Lama, he recognizes that, you know, it seems impossible for him to comprehend. However, the man has also met gajillions of people, you know, and he's talked to gajillions of people, and he's had, you know, so he's had so many life experiences, except sleeping with someone, that I'm sure he's gained some perspective just by talking to so many people in the world, and from so many different cultures, and he's very well read and all of that. So anyway, I don't need to defend the book or the Dalai Lama. He can do it himself. I wanted to actually ask you about the happiness, the edX thingy. Explain that.
So I guess it's a course
Mm-hmm.
out of the Berkeley Greater Good Science Center.
Okay.
And so there is research backing up their project. It has now ended.
Okay.
And they threw out just the first session, so I'm just doing the weeks, week by week.
Okay.
Each week starts on Tuesday. I haven't looked at yesterday's. They talked about Ed Diener,
Oh, cool.
and
Okay.
so that was my first exposure to Ed Diener before listening to the video.
The video,
that
okay.
I posted. And then the video kind of reiterated what I
Cool.
had taken notes on. But
So what's the purpose of the course? What's the purpose of the thing?
to look at, I think just like Ed's research, to look at the research of well-being. And
What do you as a
happiness.
student gain from it?
I'm not taking it for the actual, whatever, I guess you can get a certificate and credit.
Okay. So it is an online, is it an online course where an online student could?
And there's a fee of
Okay.
the certificate.
Okay.
But I'm still taking the quizzes and things to just see how I do. And I
Okay.
did well. I'm just doing it. I just think the timeliness was interesting.
Mhm.
You know, where do I feel most comfortable in my life right now? Yoga happiness. Started to go to the yoga talks, loving that. And then the compassion. I mean, it's just interesting. So that's what I'm doing.
Okay. Interesting, yeah. And how many weeks is it? How long of a
I think
course?
it's 8.
8? Okay. That's doable.
Whether I'm sticking out or not.
Well, but is
I
it,
hope
can you
to.
do it at your own pace?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's no, you know.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, look, you know, in 1 week I took 3 pages of notes.
Wow, great.
But that's who I am too. That's what I was trying to explain. Sometimes I just sort of go overboard in all this. You know, but as I sit here and think, why don't I just eat chocolate for the next week? And I've got this, you know, celebrate.
So
Okay.
eating chocolate all week isn't going overboard, but taking 3 pages of notes is.
I have no barometer to keep me in check.
That's funny. I like that.
So, I mean, I think I shared that it seems like I'm always kind of chasing, like, okay, what do I need to learn? And I'm, you know, going to ace this class or something in my head. Like,
Yeah.
you know, I was determined, work on that self-compassion, work on it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but I think it'll stick, and it has.
But was that overwhelming for you, or was it obsessive?
No, it wasn't. It was very pleasant.
Yeah.
As is this.
Yeah.
It's just very pleasant.
So I think that, you know, talking about, to your point, Jeremy, like the lines, you know, when is it that you cross the line from one thing to the other? So in listening to you talk about this, for me that just sounds like something that you're passionate about.
Right.
And sure, a passion can become extreme. People can certainly go overboard with that. But the idea of, I mean, you're learning. So svadhyaya is self-study. And learning to build yourself up. You know, we never stop being students. We never stop learning. Or we shouldn't. Of any of the things that should do in life. We should continue to learn and investigate, you know, what are my beliefs? What are the things that I think make me happy right now? And reevaluate. Because if you stay, like, if I continued to do the things that I did when I was 22, oh my God, I'd be a wreck. There's no way I could accomplish anything if I continued to do the things that I thought made me happy at 22. So, you know, those
Is
kind
there
of
anything that from that period when you're 22
Mhm.
that you still do though that makes you happy?
Yoga.
Okay.
But at 22, although I had settled down and I became comfortable with my body, you know, I wasn't as judgy about myself. But, you know, I was drinking too much. I was around the wrong people. I was partying and doing things. There's nothing wrong with partying. There's nothing wrong with drinking. But I was making extreme decisions on those things. My choices were not good. I was putting myself into, truly, like, it's amazing that I made it through all of that. I made some really bad decisions. So, but yeah, so there were, at the time, I thought I was happy because at the time, I was basing my definition of happiness on this sort of like weird accepted thing that you assume is correct for somebody in college. You know, like, I should go to all of these frat parties. I should walk around wearing stupid clothing and drinking myself into oblivion. Like, that's what everybody does at this age. Why not? And if I'm not doing it, then I must be doing something wrong, or I'm not going to fit in, or whatever. So I guess my happiness was trying to fit in. But it was false happiness. Because I didn't fit in because I wasn't being authentic. So, yeah. I don't know where I was going with that. So life changes when you reevaluate. And you
Yeah, I mean, you definitely should reevaluate. You should definitely be constantly kind of checking in to make sure that you know, are doing the things that are making you happy, that are helping you to deepen your, you know, come to a greater understanding of yourself. But I wouldn't, I mean, just, you know, beat yourself up too much for like.
Oh, I don't. Believe me, I don't.
Like, you know, so.
No, and I don't beat up, like, looking back at myself. Would I have changed something? Maybe. But, you know, I certainly don't beat myself up, or, you know, I don't have any regrets.
Because you could have, I mean, and
those things made me who I am today.
Yeah, and then thinking back, you may not, you know, you could have been your authentic self, but just not who you are today, right? You know, so.
Possibly.
So,
I mean, there are some things about myself back then that I know were not authentic, and I was a little bit aware of it at the time. Did everybody watch the Ed Diener video? So Marianne, you did the whole 45 minutes, yeah. So the idea of happiness is a virtue. Number one, what did you think of the video overall?
At first, I had a judgment. I looked at it, and you know, I hadn't seen him through that course. I had just been reading about it. So I thought, oh man, like, what is this going to be for 45 minutes?
Yeah.
Like, I so don't have time for this. I wasn't doing anything else.
Of course,
but,
yeah.
But then he's humorous. He's
Yes.
funny. And it seems like he gets it. So I ended up really liking it.
Yeah.
I would see more, and I guess he has more things when I Google,
Mhm.
like more talks and things, right?
Yeah.
I liked the whole idea that happiness is a virtue, and that his whole thing, instead of, didn't he make a joke about like, well, you can't just study happiness, like that would never fly, so
Yes.
let's call it well-being, your overall well-being.
Yeah. Right.
So that makes sense.
Yeah.
And something that I think too with the happiness, it's not just for me to be happy, but as far as a virtue, I'm also, when I'm happy, I'm also helping other people.
Yeah,
And that's that connectivity,
yeah,
that we're all connected.
yeah. And I think it goes along with, I think it's very hard to talk about happiness without talking about compassion or something like that. Because for me to feel happy, I don't want to put it that way. I can't possibly be happy if I am around people who are miserable. It's not right. I'm not doing it right if everybody around me is miserable. That means that I'm a vampire. I've taken everything from people around me and I've given nothing back. If I'm the only one happy around a bunch of miserable people, I'm an asshole. Like, I'm not doing happiness right. Because you cannot realistically be happy if everything around you, it means you're not giving anything back. To his point, you're sharing something with other people. The idea, for example, like you brought chocolate tonight. Why did you bring chocolate tonight?
I had dinner and I was like, it'd be nice to have something a little sweet after dinner. and then I was like, oh, I've got this chocolate in the fridge. Oh, it would be really nice just to like bring it to yoga class.
Yeah.
So why didn't you just sit and eat the chocolate?
Great. Why did you decide to share it?
Well, because I just finished dinner and I was just like, I'm like, oh, I gotta go to yoga class. Oh, I'll take the chocolate with me. So
Yeah.
So.
Did you at all have a plan to just eat it yourself?
No. I don't. I mean, I like chocolate, but I don't eat like
2 bars.
No, I would never. I mean, usually what I would do, so I'd get this and it would last a couple weeks.
Yeah.
I'd have a square or two after, that's all I kind of eat. So,
Yeah.
I'm much more like into the salts and stuff.
Oh, sure. Okay.
Than sweet. I mean, I do very much enjoy chocolate.
Yeah.
But,
So did you care whether or not we would enjoy it?
Sure, I cared. I was hoping you guys would enjoy it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I figured walking in with 2 bars of chocolate would be like,
Yeah.
because we're talking happiness, that would
Right.
foster happiness, right?
And then,
Not that you guys weren't happy to begin with, but then we just...
so then how did you feel when we both reacted to you?
I felt happy. I was,
Yeah.
I was like, hey.
Yeah. So,
When you were like, I was like, hey.
yeah, she wants to own these. Yeah. So, and so that just proves my point. I mean, that's what I was digging for, was that, by giving things to other people, you're gaining something, you're gaining happiness.
Right.
By making us happy.
Yeah, but then there's stuff that, I definitely think that's important and good and all that kind of stuff, right? But then that also is looking outside of others, or looking outside yourself to others for your happiness, right? I mean, in a way.
I think it's a byproduct.
Yeah.
So I started happy to begin with and shared the happiness.
Yeah.
Okay, and then that made me more happy.
Yeah. Right.
Right.
It made me happy.
But you do not rely on giving chocolate to people to make you happy. You don't rely on. I mean, maybe. But I mean, the act of giving is that's the point. I mean, that's compassion. That's, sharing is caring is the thing, So if, it's like volunteering. We gave you nothing back. So that was true, like, although the thing that you got back from that was you felt good making us happy, that's it. So you're not relying on me to give you something by that.
I mean, I know we need until you guys bring some cookies or something.
Yeah, you're like,
I'm like, come actually right. I had a very good friend of mine, where, I don't know, he had me over for dinner or something, right? And I'd be like, that was a great dinner. I should have you over for dinner.
Right.
And he's like, that would be wonderful to have you, but don't feel like because I had you over for dinner that you need to, this is just a gift, okay? And I enjoy giving it to you,
Yes.
okay? And I'm just like, oh yeah, right.
Just accept the damn gift. Just accept the damn
yeah,
gift.
and sometimes it's hard because you're so trained to be like, I pat you on the back, here's my back,
Right.
that kind of thing. And but yeah, it's to be able to give, obviously is one thing, but to be able to receive a gift is also a skill that a lot of folks, I know I need practice.
Thank you so much for watching this Yoga Talks. This is the last Yoga Talks that we recorded at the old studio on Arcadia. And so the next Yoga Talks video that you'll see was recorded at the new location, 3630 North High Street. So it was really nice to actually have a wonderful discussion about happiness at the last place. Big special thanks to my Patreon patrons, Chris, Nancy, Lauren, Athne, Vince, Jeremy, and Marianne. Thank you so much. I really truly appreciate your support, and reminder that to those of you that are patrons, the videos and things, the content is always free, but for those of you that are actually helping to support these videos and these podcasts and things like that, starting in October, patrons will finally get a reward other than having me say your name and put it up at the end of the videos. I will be doing streaming yoga classes starting in October, and I think I'm nearly 100% sure. I've been saying it, and I really hope it works out. I want them to be my morning classes that are streaming, and patrons will get those for free, so that you'll have access to them. You won't be charged for the streaming class, just the per creation thing that's part of the Patreon system. So that's exciting. I'm really excited to be able to provide that to you. So look for that in October. The next video is part 3 of happiness, our discussion about happiness. I hope you enjoy it. I hope this is giving you some things to think about. I'm not the definitive answer. We're just sort of discussing topics and concepts. But I do hope that this is giving you some food for thought, something to go deeper and think about, what does happiness mean to me? What is the purpose of my, not just life. I mean, that's big, but like every moment. What kind of purpose can I bring to every moment? And the purpose can simply be rejuvenating yourself. It doesn't always have to be giving and thinking of how to sustain the planet. I mean, there's so much, and I don't know about you, but I sometimes feel overwhelmed by, there's a lot that needs to be done. People are in need, people are suffering, the planet's suffering, but if I feel like I'm in that constant state of, oh my God, there's just so much to do, and I'm only one person, then that's really truly the time to step back. And I want to use the word protect. Protect my own happiness, protect how I feel, because feeling overwhelmed is not productive. So being able to step back and focus on what would make me happy right now, probably just sitting and breathing and thinking about nobody else. And so, no offense everyone, I love you all, but this past week or so of not teaching, working on the studio, and just sort of taking a step back and time for myself has been really great. I've got another several days of no teaching, just preparing the space, and I'm enjoying it. I'm probably screwing up my sleep schedule since I teach morning classes, and I haven't been for a couple of weeks, so But that's okay. It's a nice break, and I would feel rejuvenated already, and I still have some days left. So I'm excited to share the next Yoga Talks with you once I get that edited up. And as always, you know, I keep thinking of things that I want to add to our discussions and things to make them, I don't know, a little bit more, I don't know, deep and feel it sort of like, you know, saturate. One of the things that we're going to start doing coming up, maybe if I can remember it, I'll do it for this last Yoga Talks that's the last Wednesday in September. We're going to start a segment called Tell Me Something Good, and we're going to start it, kickstart it, the first, I don't know, 5, 10, 15 minutes of Yoga Talks will always be Tell Me Something Good. And if that spirals off into its own thing, that's great. I'd also like to have special sessions where maybe we just have a class that's simply, maybe not a class, but you know, like a discussion or whatever, that's simply like, tell me something good. Those will be recorded, and if they're long and juicy stories, then we'll we'll separate them out maybe into their own videos and share those. But that's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've been really thinking about it, and I feel like it's going to be best at the beginning of Yoga Talks to start off with. So look out for that in the upcoming videos. And as always, Yoga Talks, you are invited to be part of the discussion in person. You don't have to be on video. But if you are interested in being part of the discussions, whatever the topic, please feel free. Come to the studio. The new location is 3630 North High Street in Columbus. 7:30 to 8:30 p.m. on Wednesdays. That's still going to continue happening. And we may be in this space. So this is my office space that I'll also be doing private lessons, Thai yoga, massage, and so forth. So we may be doing Yoga Talks in here while there's another class going on in the big asana room. Big asana room. I'll put that in quotes. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your week, and I'll see you on the next Yoga Talks Happiness Part 3 video. Bye, everyone.